And then after about 7 or 8 months of deterioration and with no diagnosis, nobody knew what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I was just getting worse and worse. I started healing. There was this incredible heat that came through my body, first in my heart and then in my wrists, so much so that I actually blistered. But there needed to be 4 crucial things that I'm going to go through in order for me to get to that point. So the first one was I had to start getting my life back. All right, I had to start making friends again. At the time, an ex-girlfriend was driving me around and she was being my hand, she was feeding me, and we started getting back into a bit of a relationship, even though I knew she was the wrong person for me. I started convincing myself that maybe she might be, but it wasn't that so much as it was spending time again with friends and sort of having something to look forward to every day, even though every morning I woke up, I realized I was back in this nightmare. Things started getting a little bit better. I started spending time again with friends, especially on weekends. And then in the evening, I would go down there was a local backpackers, and people would, help me out. So she was driving me around and feeding me, and these people would open, and I started spending time with people again, which I had not been doing. When I was on my spiritual phase, I'd just been concentrating on spirituality. So the one was getting my life back. The second one was letting go, was actually realizing that even if I had my hands amputated, because that's the way it was going, so even if I amputated my hands and had to live the rest of my life without my hands, that I would be okay. And I knew that I was playing a trick on the brain, but I still had to play this trick on the brain in order to get better. So because the main stress was that I was going to lose my hands completely, because by then my arms over here were down to the size of my wrists. So they were like basically just a bone, I had to play this game on my brain. So whenever it started going, how is your life going to be possible without hands? I'd have to go, no, you can live without hands. So that was kind of like a surrender type thing. Whereas before I was thinking, I can't imagine losing my hands forever. I'm not using them now and life is terrible. I want to kill myself. And then, so each time my brain started going down that path, it was like, no, you'll be happy even if you lose your hand. Now the other two were very interesting. The one was my brain, without me knowing, out of survival, because I was coming closer and closer to death. My organs were showing signs of shutting down, and so there were signs. So and it was, I really felt like I was reaching the end, and the brain knew that as well. And I believe this is what happened, because there's no way of knowing for certain, because what happened was the brain implanted a memory when I was 7 years old that I'm destined to change the world, that I could remember everything else after that in relation to that one memory. So it changed all my memories after that, leading up to that age when I was 32. So it inserted that memory because, and the reason why I believe that it inserted it then was, that was the first time I ever spoke about it, was when I met this woman who did this violet flame treatment on me. Sure, it took quite a few hours of just me imagining this violet flame like burning through my whole body. And then I was completely flushed after that. So that had quite a big contribution, because it was, okay, but just going back to the memory, let's not get sidetracked here. So the memory got inserted when I was 7-year-old, lying in a garden, getting surrounded by unconditional love, saying that you are going to change the world. So change the world type scenario, which is the carrot, all right? Because the brain has never experienced that amount of adulation as the type of person that is going to change the world for the better. It's experienced every other type of good thing, like falling in love or friendships, but then there's always like that element of friendships aren't as good as what you think it's going to be, even though that's what you're really desiring, or falling in love, it wasn't, that kind of fades after a while. Everything else had faded, but the brain had never experienced that type of adulation that you would get if you are the one person to change the world. And I believe that it inserted that memory so that it gave my brain a carrot in order to survive. So from worst case scenario, you are over here where you are close to death, and then there's a carrot of you're going to change the world. But what needs to happen in between is your body needs to heal in order for you to change the world. But your brain doesn't tell it that, but that's what it knows in order to heal. And this is the theory that I tested out under hypnosis, and I actually tried to approach universities, try to do a PhD on it. I got shut down by countless universities. So that's why I'm going public about this. But that was just one of the things that healed me. And then the next thing was an email from somebody in Cornwall in England that my mother had met about a year previously. And this lady was a psychic, and my mother had phoned her, and we've still got the recording of that first phone call. And the first thing this lady says to my mother is, "Do you have a son? Because I feel like this is about your son, because I really need to speak to him." And then I couldn't get to the phone the next week, but then she made a recording and then transcribed it and then emailed it to us. And out came this email, and this is where things get kind of spooky, is that on this email, there were 4 things that I never told anyone about. One of them was words that I'd started hearing that I had to look up in a dictionary. This is even before I got ill, that was helping me with my spiritual progress. And she said very clearly in this email and in the tape that she sent afterwards, it was very clearly there were 4 things, and one of them was, we have been sending you words that you don't know the meaning of, that you have to look up to know that this is not just your brain, that this is coming from a getting a bit emotional, sorry, that this is coming from a higher power, that we are sending you words that you have to look up. Then I was getting once every 2 weeks I was getting a word, and then I'd have to look up the word, and it had to do with my thinking at the time, and it helped me to understand more about, because when I first got into spirituality, I was just reading everything that I could and trying to figure out, if God does exist, then why this and why that and what this, and these words are coming through that I wouldn't understand, and I hadn't told anyone about that. And that was one of the first things she said. She said, because you've got this questioning mind and the skeptical mind, and so this is one way that we've proven to you that a higher power exists. And then she said that as well, she also said that we've started restoring some movement to your hands. And it was just before I read that email that my hands had started, just my pinky on my left hand. My left hand was better than my right. Just my pinky on my left hand just started moving one afternoon while I was being read to. Just the pinky, but in really bizarre movements that I couldn't replicate with my own brain. And then the other one started moving, and I was seeing an occupational therapist at the time, and it took her 10 minutes to get the one finger from straight to there, because it had been like 8 months before since I'd stopped the use of my hands. And then after these movements started happening, I went back to her, and it took her like 2 or 3 minutes, and she got it to past 90 degrees. She said, "You're improving so quickly," but I didn't tell her why. But my hands were moving independently of my own sort of, I just had to keep on letting go to allow the movements to happen. And it was mostly the pinky, and then this little finger, and then it was an extension, which was really scary, because when you extend your hands, then your wrists, they kind of really strained, because my hands slowly started getting more and more sort of clawed. And when paraplegics will know this, that when you stop using a muscle, the muscle and quadriplegics, that the muscle slowly tightens. So you've always got to stretch the muscle out. But it's quite scary when you've got many tendons that are going through that. And it's okay when you're in that position, but when you start extending, then they start tweaking, and that's where all the pain was. And that was really scary, especially, first it was the pinky, but it was doing all these motions and then extending, and then it was the other fingers. So she mentioned that in the email. She said that we've started restoring movement to your fingers, and I read the email after it had started. But the other one was that it's not going to heal immediately like you think that it can, So I'd never told anyone this, but I'd come to the realization that if the power was, because I'd started getting this heat, and I thought, well, if God is so powerful, then he could just heal me instantly, and I was thinking along these lines. And so the third thing she said was like, it's not going to heal immediately like you've been thinking. And I was like, that was the third thing that I hadn't told anyone. And I can't remember what the fourth thing was. It's in the book. So it was the getting my life back, the letting go. Then it was this incredible heat that started coming through. And then it was this email from Debbie Clayton, who I interview in a podcast, which is an upcoming episode. So this incredible heat started after I went to this lady. And then it was, did I say it was the implanted memory of kind of like the donkey and the carrot, the donkey chasing the carrot. So worst case scenario to best case scenario, and in between there's healing. I didn't know it as well, but I was through this sort of letting go process, and maybe from all the meditation I've been doing, I was actually having what they call a Kundalini awakening, where you do get this incredible sort of power coming through your whole body and kind of realigning stuff. And it's most painful in the most diseased places of your body. Although I've never actually had it in my throat area, because I still have this fear of expressing like what I've been through, and that's why this process is actually quite terrifying for me to tell you this. I've had this blocked sort of throat area my whole life. I spoke about stuttering when I was a child, and it's and also being quite different. And then you say things that you've been thinking, and everyone looks at you and go, well, that doesn't make sense. And just doing this as well is pretty damn scary, to explain what happened. This incredible heat, mostly in the heart, that would go on for hours. At first I thought I was having a heart attack. And then I was like, and then I said, okay, God, if this is you, then move the heat to my left elbow, move it to my right elbow, move it to my left knee, my right ankle. And this heat moved to all these places in my body. So I thought, well, maybe it's not just my mind. Maybe this is God. Maybe this is God finally coming to help me. And then incredible heat in my wrists, so much so that the wrists started blistering. And at that time, I had my wrists in casts, because I told you about the scratching that I was doing at the beds while I was sleeping. But the movement carried on every day for months, and then eventually the movement started going to other joints as well, and this heat started going, I had visible blisters in my wrists, and this carried on for 6 months, and slowly I started regaining the use of my hands. And then I was like, well, you're going to change the world. My whole body started actually doing all these unwinds. So it wasn't only my hands that were unwinding, then my shoulders started unwinding when I could use my hands. Shoulders as well, because I had major injuries in my shoulders. I had shoulders and elbows, and then my knees as well. Incredible pain, and in my teeth. Incredible pain in my teeth. Basically, the parts of my body that had been mostly damaged in my life leading up till then. Just incredible pain and incredible heat just for hours and hours a day, or in my tendons, my Achilles tendons, incredible heat in those for actually, that was for like a month every day. And those slowly got stronger and healed. So that was really awesome, as I managed to heal. And now I was set to change the world, because that is what my brain had convinced itself, that I was destined to change the world, and that's what I planned to do. And I was set on my way. I wasn't going back to being a chiropractor. I was set on my way to change the world and make a difference and make the world a better place. So it was happy times until until something else happened. But we'll cover that next time. So I hope you enjoyed that story.